Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for another exciting episode of Safe Money Radio. And I said this before, if you heard the first time I had Tonya Murfin on as a guest, I said, hey, we're going to have her back on again for part 2 of many different parts in a series. And so today, our real estate expert, my personal realtor, Tonya Murfin, is back with us on the show. Tonya, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me back. I'm excited.
Well, you know, I will say this. We talk about all things financial on this show. We've been on the air for 15 years now. This is our 16th year. And if you are in the Springfield, Missouri area, we've had a lot of jokes from callers lately. They're like, man, Brad, you are everywhere. Yes, I have billboards, up 65 and on 44 and on the bypass. And we have stuff in the airport, and you'll see stuff wherever you go. So we are kind of everywhere. That's what we want. We want to be in your mind every day with you. No matter where you turn, there are things in the financial world that you don't realize are part of your financial world, that are part of your financial plan. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I've learned some things about my own financial planning while talking with Tanya before the show today, and I didn't realize just how much of my own personal portfolio is wrapped up in today's topic. So, Tanya, if you will, remind everyone what you do. Tell us about your profession in this world we live in and what it is that you do for your clients.
Yes. Well, Brad, I have been in real estate now for 23 years, and I grew up in a family of builders and developers. So it just felt natural to go into this career after I had children and really wanted to do something different. And I am a broker owner of Southwest Missouri Realty. And so I help buyers, sellers, investors sell a little bit of commercial. I've done it all, and I love this job. It is a passion of mine. It's a relationship business, and I actually have a family business. My 2 daughters work with me, much like Hunter, your son, works with you. We have that in common. So we get to see each other every day at work, and although it can sometimes be either entertaining or frustrating working with family, it's also a great joy of mine.
It's a beautiful thing. I'm so grateful for this blessing. My daughter actually worked with us for a while too until she got married and moved to the north. But today, we're going to be talking specifically about real estate, all different types of real estate, not only the home that you own, but also owning rental properties, owning farms, owning land, and how these other sources of income can be a very important part of your retirement income plan. I call it the RIP, the RIP, the retirement income plan for you in the future. And I'm from Arkansas, Tanya, so I grew up in the days of John Daly and his, the professional golfer, played for Arkansas. Yes. He's a 3-time major champion winner, and his phrase was grip it and rip it. He just didn't care how big his backswing was. He would go back and he would rip the ball. And I think about it in a different way. I want us to be setting things up in our retirement income planning where we can grip it and rip it. We want to be able to rip our income stream through the remainder of our retirement days. We don't want to have to play it easy and worry about the market and, oh, it's up, so I can take more out. Oh, it's down, so I'm going to have to eat crackers this month. I don't want that. Yeah. So if you're listening right now, we're going to take a quick break. I want to give you a phone number because throughout the show today, I know Tanya's going to be sharing a lot of information, and you're going to say, I want to know more about that. Our main phone number is 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233, and you can call in anytime. And then, Tanya, tell them how they can get in touch with you as we get started today.
My phone number is 417-827-1405. You can also find me on the internet. Give it a Google, Tonya Murfin or Murfin Group. And Tanya.swmrealty.com is my website. You can find me there. And you can also find me on all social media platforms.
Perfect. Tanya, here's what I want to do. Let's talk about not just our primary home, but also so many people, they want to get into owning rental properties because we'll say in the business, the experts in this business will say there's a 3-legged stool when it comes to retirement income. There is Social Security, that's one leg. Then you have pensions, that's the other leg. And then there are annuities or any other type of guaranteed income, which is the other leg. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't have pensions. That's like 80% of people don't have the pension. So you've got a wobbly stool already. And then a lot of people just don't know how to own annuities or how to structure them. They don't understand them. They're afraid of them. And so then you're more like on a unicycle. You're hopping around on one leg with just your Social Security, and that's not a good plan. Real estate can be part of that. That's why I said any other type of guaranteed income. Now, real estate's not guaranteed, but let's talk about that being part of the stool where we've got some rental properties that are bringing in guaranteed income to us as long as we have renters there. But let's talk about the positives of owning real estate in a retirement income plan.
Okay, so owning real estate as an investment, if you have a loan on that property and it's financed, you've got someone making that payment for you, right? By having a renter in there and having monthly income, you are probably making that payment, hopefully, by someone else living there. So you're automatically gaining equity in that house without putting your money in it. Any improvements you make on that are going to be write-offs for you. And you get to write off an investment property, a residential investment property, for 27.5 years. That's just the rule of thumb. So if you're putting a new air conditioner in, if you go in and repaint or redo all the landscaping when a renter moves out, all of those receipts you're going to hand over to your accountant at the end of the year, and that's going to be a write-off for you, as well as that depreciation you get to take every year. You are building equity, right? So we mentioned that somebody's making that payment for you. Well, depending on how long you've had that property, you are knocking down that payment and that principal over time, and you're making that equity balloon bigger. Obviously, in the last 5 years, Brad, we've seen all of our properties, not only our investment properties, but our own houses we live in, grow exponentially in value because of what the COVID years did to our real estate values. So maybe if you bought that property 10 years ago for 130, it's probably worth double that now. So you've got a huge net worth right there in the equity of that home. For retirees, as you know, this can be a great income stream. So let's say you buy the property when you're in your 30s or 40s. By the time you retire, then you're going to have that note paid off more than likely on a 30-year note. And that $1,500 payment a month is just going to come to you as income. So those are all the positive sides of owning investment property. We will go into the negative side and a lot of what people don't talk about. So we'll go into that in a little bit.
Let's talk about one other thing as a positive, and that's would be like what I'm talking about with selling my farms, just the net worth and growth from it. When it comes to owning these different rental homes, and yes, you get them paid off. Let's say, because I've had a lot of real estate clients over the years, I think the most rentals that one of my clients had was 37. Now, they had a full-time property manager, but they had 37 different properties. Some of them were commercial properties, but the majority of them were single, double dwelling homes. There were some just traditional homes. There were also some duplexes, some quadplexes. But once they get those paid off, they also now have an asset there that not only is providing monthly income, but if they get tired of the game, they can sell it. And that's substantial income to them, right?
Oh, absolutely. As you often see, a lot of people in their older years, they do start selling those off because then you've got, a big chunk of money that you can diversify in different ways. And that's why they hire you, Brad, so they know what to do with that money. Many times you don't see 80 and 90-year-old people owning investment properties. They've probably started to peel those off.
Yes. And that's what we'll talk about near the end of the show is why someone would build up all this net worth. They would build up all these rental properties that has all this income coming in. And then why would they choose to sell them? We'll talk about why. And that's because of those different transitions in life, the different stages. My good friend Tom Hegna talks about the 3 stages of retirement planning. And he says, stage 1, once you retire, is the go-go years. That's where you go, do all the things you always wanted to do that you never got to do because you were working. So you go. And then there are the slow go years. And that's where things kind of start to, you pump the brakes a little bit and say, okay, we're not going to take 8 vacations this year. Maybe we're going to take 3 or 4. And maybe the grandkids are going to come see us half the time instead of us always going to them. And then you hit that final stage, which is the no-go years. So you go from go to slow go to no-go. And in the no-go years, that's when you're not owning properties like this. That's where you're saying, okay, I'm not going anywhere. I can't manage a property. My kids are going to come visit me. I'm not taking trips anywhere. And so we have these 3 realistic stages in retirement planning. Now, before retirement days, we're all constantly on the go. And that's maybe a perfect scenario for people to own real estate. So if you're listening today and you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, doesn't matter where you are. Maybe you're thinking, hey, yeah, I would like to dip my toe in the water. I'd like to learn more about maybe purchasing a second home and having it as a rental. And you need an expert to talk to. Well, that's why Tanya's on the show today. So Tanya, tell them again how they can get in touch with you.
You can reach me on my cell phone, 417-827-1405. My website is Tonya, Tonya, swmrealty.com. I work for Southwest Missouri Realty. You can give that a Google and you can typically find me. And you can find me on all social platforms as well.
Now let's shift and let's jump into some of the negatives that are there, because they're there. So we always have to look at any investment, any opportunity, any product, any account. What are the positive? What are the negatives? And does this work best for me? So what are some of the negatives involved in owning real estate as a second?
So let's say that our listener is thinking about getting into buying investment properties. They know nothing about it. So you are going to need probably 20 to 25% down for a residential property. If it's a multifamily, you're going to need probably more than that, 25 to 30%. Okay. If you are looking at getting an in-house loan, so let's say you go to your local bank and their rates for an in-house loan are going to be better. However, that is going to probably be amortized over a shorter amount of time. So probably a 20-year note versus a 30-year note, but you're going to get a better interest rate versus going to the secondary market and that loan being sold off to Fannie or Freddie. You're going to have 20% down, so probably less money down, but you're going to get a higher interest rate. It's probably right now it's going to be 8 or higher. So those are things that you've got to sit down and talk to your investment banker and go over all of those terms and look at that long-term picture for you, because this is probably not going to be a property that you're selling off anytime soon. You need to look at the long-range plan. So with the 30-year note, obviously your payment's going to be lower, but you're going to have a higher interest rate and a lower interest rate with the shorter amortization over 20 years. So those are things to talk about with your lender or your banker. You also would need to make sure you have a savings account for buying that investment property. So let's say you go in and you buy a house that needs a little love. You've got to repaint it. You got to put new floors in. You got to put new appliances in, just some basic stuff. Give it some love, some TLC to get your first renter in there. Well, you got to have money out of pocket for that as well. So a lot of people will plan that 20, 25% down that they need to get the loan, but they've not thought about all the costs they're going to incur to actually get it ready to rent. Then you may not get it rented the first month. So I have a rental right now, Brad, that came open in mid-March. And, to me, I was thinking, well, this is a great time to hit people before summer hits. I just got it rented last night. So it's taken me longer than I would have thought to get it rented, almost 40, 45 days. And of course, I had to do some things to it. This time around, I spent about $1,000 getting it ready because I had really good renters in this time. They were there about a year and a half, and I made it very clear what it needed to look like when I walked back in it. However, the people who rented it before them, I spent $22,000 fixing things and remodeling it because they had way more pets in there than what they had told me they had. So there's a negative for you. Renters sometimes don't tell the truth. So they might say they have one dog and they maybe a small or medium-sized dog, and in actuality, they have 2 large dogs and 2 cats. When I got that back a couple of years ago, it smelled like a pig pen.
Yeah.
And that is not pleasant when you walk in and they say, oh, we've cleaned it. We're expecting to get our deposit back. And it smells like a farm. And you realize that it is covered in dog hair. And the walls, I literally had to scrub every wall in it before I painted it again. So a few of the pitfalls of actually owning rental property, you've got to be prepared for a bad tenant occasionally. Yes. I've really had good luck over the years with other tenants that, of course, you've always, every few tenants, you're going to have to go back in and repaint. Yeah. Maybe carpeting is expired and you need to go in and put new flooring in. That's just a normal variance. But when you get the bad tenant and you have to really sink money into it, you've really got to have that savings account to be able to put that money in it, because that's out of your pocket.
Yes. Yes. I would always teach people whenever I was building my business, and I made it through the first 4 to 5 years of struggle, because it just is for any business owner. There's a 90% failure rate in the financial services world. So 9 out of 10 business owners don't make it through the first year. But what I tell everyone is this: when they say, well, how did you do it? Well, here's how I did it. I always took 25%, which was more than I was advised to do. I took 25% of every penny I made and I poured it back into my business. It was in a savings account, and I had a goal. I want $100,000 built in savings in my business account, to where no matter what happens in the market, no matter what happens in the economy, I've got money to draw from for marketing, for emergencies, for income, for salaries, for whatever. Same thing is
Yep.
true with rental properties. Hey, if you
Mhm.
only own 2 or 3, maybe you only own 1, you're going to be your own property manager. You're the one taking the calls late at night. You're the one replacing the refrigerators and the windows and the storm damage. If you own
Yep.
15 or 20, you pay for a property manager to go deal with those things for you. But if you are a single individual owner of 2 or 3 homes, you're going to have this bank account that Tanya's talking about. You're going to have savings. You're going to have to shave 20% off your growth and your earnings and put that back into your own accounts and keep it there for emergency money. It's just important.
I'll mention the time involved, Brad. So
Yeah.
if you have one rental as opposed to having 5 or 10, and you're managing those yourself, and you also have a full-time job and a family and grandkids and, all the things that life has to offer, you've got to have time to address repairs, to
Yes.
address getting them rented, showing it, going through applications. That's a whole nother process. And there's a lot of platforms these days. For instance, Zillow has a great platform for rental properties and landlords. And you can also, as a tenant, you can find all kinds of rental properties on Zillow. But as a landlord, Zillow allows somebody to go on and apply for the house to rent it. It does a background check on them. And so when I get in there and I have a new applicant, I can see the full picture of that applicant. I can see their income. They have the ability to upload their paycheck stubs. So it's a really great platform to use if you are a landlord, if you're thinking about getting into having investment properties.
Fantastic. Well, this is what I love about this episode on the show. We're showing you not just all the bed of roses side, the positive side. Oh, you should own real estate. It's wonderful and you'll never have any trouble. There's also the realistic side, the time that's involved, the upfront cost, the down payments, the mortgage interest, which can also be a positive in the write-offs. But there's both sides. There's so many things that are involved in it. And I wish we had more time to talk about all that, but we want to just touch on each different aspect of owning rental properties. And so we're going to move on to our next topic. We didn't talk about one negative on purpose. We saved it for this segment. My good friend, America's IRA expert, Ed Slott, always says this. I say it almost every week. One of the biggest issues with owning real estate, as with all kinds of investments, is this. It's not what you make. It's what you get to keep after you pay Uncle Sam his portion that counts. And so when it comes to real estate, we got to talk about taxes. I'm going to share a list here, maybe some in this segment, some in the next one for sure, of all the properties I've bought and sold. I've made a gain on all of them. Throughout my life, there's only been one home that I purchased that I did not make money on. I lost about $5,000 to $7,000. Guess what? That was during 2008. That's what happened. It was a perfect storm
Shocker.
that created a scenario where it went down. But in all the
Yeah.
other circumstances, I've made significant gains. Tanya, what is one of the ways you can deal with the taxes involved, the gains that are involved when you sell a property?
So if it's an investment property, Brad, you can use what's called a 1031 exchange. So I'm going to dumb it down and give just the bullet point rules for a 1031 exchange. It
Okay.
must be an investment property, as I said. When you sell that property, so let's say I own my first investment and I'm getting ready to sell it and I don't want to pay any gains. I don't want to pay any taxes on my gains. And I also want to reinvest my money into another investment property. So the sale triggers a couple of things, a couple of deadlines. Number one, it triggers a 45-day rule that you've got to identify at least 3 properties that you might buy. Okay. And then it also triggers another timeline. You have 180 days to close on one of those properties or multiples of those properties. They must be of equal or greater value to the relinquished property. That's important. I had a property that I sold last year and it was an Airbnb. It's a cautionary tale, so maybe we can tell that here in a little bit. But I would have had to have kept my LLC open, and I would have had to have spent more money than what I sold it for, at least that or greater. Wasn't interested in that, so I had to pay capital gains on it. So it wasn't a great situation. And the last rule is you must identify a qualified intermediary, and that is typically a title company. Of
Yes.
course, you're going to want somebody else, you're going to want hands off of this money because you want a professional to take care of it for you. So you identify a title company that you are going to close with that first property, and then they manage your money that's sitting there until you actually purchase the other property or properties.
And so maybe you've got some properties that you own, you were thinking about selling them, but you didn't want to deal with the tax man. As long as you can determine another property to roll those funds into and it's a like property, you can continue to kick that can on down the road. And here's why that's a beautiful thing. If you end up passing at some point, you can actually get step up in basis on those properties for your future heirs. And it's a way to really get rid of the tax man all the way around. But that's for another day and another conversation. Give us a call, 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. Or you can call Tanya directly. Tanya, give them your number real quick.
Yeah, it's 417-827-1405. Tonya Murfin with Southwest Missouri Realty.
Tanya, let's talk about how important this one word is, because it's pretty important. Talk to us about timing when it comes to purchasing properties.
Isn't everything in life about timing, really, when you think about it? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
In real estate, it really, really is all about timing. And then I'd say it's about location. If you look at where you live right now and what you own today, if you haven't bought or sold property, that property, your primary residence, in let's say 4, 5, or more years, there's a really good chance you have a big amount of equity compared to what you paid for that house, right? So we
Yes.
have seen our property values a lot of times double in their value in the last 4 to 5 years since COVID. I think that timing always has to be an element in what you're buying and where you're buying it. The timing and the location of it, obviously, makes a
Yes.
big deal. Brad, what I would say is it's really important to hire a professional, right? So there are a lot of people that want to do this on their own. They want to do their retirement plans on their own.
Yes.
Well, they're probably not going to be as well set up in the end when they get to those retirement years if they haven't visited with someone like you. It's the same in my profession. Sometimes people think they know more than they actually do about the market. And there are times that I might get a phone call from a buyer or seller, and we talk about their situation and what they're wanting to do. And it's my job to really look at their situation and say whether it's a good time to buy or sell or not. You know, there are times when people have purchased a property that they haven't owned it long enough and it's not appreciated enough, or maybe they didn't have a big enough down payment when they bought it, that they're barely going to get out by the skin of their teeth in actually paying it off by the time they pay real estate compensation and pay all their fees and pay their loan off. They could even be in the hole.
Yes.
So you do have to own a property long enough, oftentimes, to make it worth your money of owning in the first place, right? Now, there are situations like relocations. People get a different job. They don't have a choice. They have to leave. Maybe there's a death. Maybe there's a divorce. These are all times that you really need to consult the professional. Call a real estate professional and make sure you're working with somebody that can tell you about the market, tell you about the timing of the market. You know, if somebody called me in November and said, hey, we're thinking about selling. And I say, well, what is your timing of getting to where you need to be? December might not be the time to list the house, depending on where it's at, the location of it, the price point of it. I might say, well, if you're not planning to move or buy that second home until late summer, let's wait until we have the spring market, and all the buyers, typically spring and summer, generally our heaviest selling markets. So
Yes.
sometimes that timing element also needs to be thought about and considered.
Right. Well, that's such good information. And I'll say this, even if nothing else, if a person thinks, oh, I don't need a professional to help me, I've got this figured out. If nothing else, just the tax ramification. If they don't fully understand how the taxes work on their investments, on an
Yes.
IRA, a 401k, when they pass it on to a spouse or a non-spouse, or their real estate, if they don't understand the rules that come with owning a primary home for at least 2 years to the last 5 years, or whether or not they're in a community property state or a separate property state and all the stuff that goes with it, they may do a fairly good job of building some assets. And then when it comes time to sell or when they pass, they may have created a massive tax problem and they never thought about that side of it. So working with someone like Tanya, working with someone when it comes to the investment side or the financial planning side like myself, there's a reason why I put myself through 5 different designation courses to make sure I know the stuff
Yeah.
that makes sure you keep the money in your own pocket instead of giving it to Uncle Sam. I own a lot of real estate. I've owned a lot over the years, and I want to share with you just how good it can be for you. So way back in 2002, when I was a po boy, I mean po, I didn't have any money. I purchased a home, and this is going to make some people go, oh, if only I could go back and buy properties. I purchased a home in 72 acres, Tanya, for $160,000.
Oh my gosh.
72 acres and a 2,500 square foot home. Now, the person that bought it or that built it was deeded the 72 acres from their father. They didn't know how much it was worth. Long story short, I sold it 5 years later for $275,000. I didn't have any money. That was a fantastic deal for me. However, it got purchased by a real estate person who then split it into multiple properties and made a fortune off of it. So bought for 160, sold for 275. Then I purchased, still back in the good old days, 340 acres for 430,000. I sold it for 670,000. I sold it right at the beginning of COVID. 6 months later, the people who bought it from me sold it for 975,000. They made the same gain I made in 5 years in 6 months.
Wow.
I then purchased 62 acres for 174,000. I sold it 1 year later for 210,000. I purchased a 200-acre farm in Kansas for 625,000. I sold it 1 year later for 750,000. I then purchased a 283-acre farm for $1,313,130. The most unique offer I ever made. One of my lucky numbers is 13. My grandson was born on the 13th, so I paid 1.313130, and I sold it for $1,575,000 3 years later.
Wow.
So $260,000 gain there. And then the purchase that I was just talking about earlier, I purchased a 251-acre farm with a home on it for $940,000 5 years ago, and just sold it for $1,495,000.
Wow.
So when you add up all those properties that I was just playing with, I would buy it because I wanted to hunt and fish there, maybe have a place to go on the weekend, just to own a farm. I would find another one and someone would want to buy it. And I would say, well, if you want to pay this, I'll sell it. And I would roll the money into another one using a 1031 exchange, which we talked about. And when you add all that up, I've made $1,332,000 in gains just on buying and selling properties. And
Wow.
so, friends, you could do this with any type of real estate. You could do it with rentals. You could do it with multiple homes. You could do it with farms. You could do it with some combo farms where it's a rental or it's a farm land with a rental home on it, or maybe a secondary vacation home. You can use it however you want to. But the cool thing is, in 3 of those farms, they also had farm income to me. So when I owned them, a farmer was paying me to rent the land, and I had $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 in income coming in from those properties while I owned them, and then still had those gains. Tanya, your thoughts regarding all that craziness?
I'm glad you shared that, Brad, because a lot of people don't talk about that. They're not willing to throw out those numbers. So I appreciate you being candid about that. I think it's a great example of when you stop to think about something that you've enjoyed doing over the years, which is buying and selling farms, when you stop to write down the numbers and you realize how much equity or how much money you've made in doing all of that, and by doing the 1031 exchange, you have not incurred any of those capital gains that you would have to pay on that. It's really been a great wealth building tool for you. And anybody, as you said, anybody could do that with investment properties or even the home you live in. I would say that every home that I have bought and sold and lived in for a variety of years. Some of them I stayed in 3 years. Now I'm in a home that I've been in for 11 years, which is the longest I've ever been in a home. A lot of people can make a really good amount of equity by buying right and the right timing and
Yes.
taking care of that property, making improvements. And that doesn't mean remodeling the whole thing, but small improvements along the way and maintaining the property. If you hold on to it long enough and you resell it, more than likely you're going to make money on it.
Yes.
I know that there's a lot of people in retirement age that you meet that have been in their home for 30 years. I think that that's a generational thing, Brad. I think that probably our parents, that was more common in their era than it is in today's era of young people and middle-aged people. But those people who owned that one home for 30 or 40 years, they never got the opportunity really to turn multiple properties and make money on their primary residence. So it really comes down to what are you comfortable with? What is your lifestyle? What do you view that being in the future for you to have the stomach to move maybe every 4 years or every 7 years, earn money each time you sell and be able to reinvest that back into your primary residence.
Absolutely. That's so good. Real estate is such an important piece of the retirement income plan puzzle, not just the home you live in, maybe also multiple rental properties. It may be your farm. It may be something that you don't own right now, but you know you're going to inherit the family farm. I get a call every single week about someone that's just inherited the family farm. And most of the time, they don't want to own the farm. They want to sell it. So there's all the tax ramifications involved. And so real estate is probably going to be more of the retirement picture for you than you realize it is. And so here's what I want to do. I want to share this to make sure we give both sides of the spectrum. When it comes to people owning properties, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, Tanya talked about this earlier in the show. What we see a lot of is people in their mid 60s to early 70s. That's when I start getting the phone calls saying, hey, Brad, as you know, we own 10, 12 properties. We just can't do it anymore. We want to sell these properties and take all the income that was coming in from those properties and find something different that will work better for us. And this is why that happens. I will normally say this, Tanya, to someone if you're a real estate owner right now and you're near retirement, let me pose it to you like this. What was the purpose of the rental property? Well, it was to build equity. It was to build net growth there and overall income so that it can provide me a monthly income stream that I'm going to need in retirement. But I'm tired of the headache. I'm tired of the taxes. I'm tired of the renters. I'm tired of the repairs. I'm tired of the time, all the things we talked about in segment 3 on the negatives. I will say, okay, what if there's an asset you can use? You could sell that property and roll that into an asset that did all of those things but had none of the headaches. Would you be interested? Oh, yeah. Well, that's an annuity. You're taking something that's doing what a rental home is doing. You're taking an amount of money. Let's say you sold a rental home. You roll it into an annuity and you purchase it. And guess what? Every month for the rest of your life, there's a renter in that home, the annuity home. Every month for the rest of your life, it's going to pay you a monthly paycheck. And there are no windows that get broken. There are no roofs that blow off. There are no real estate taxes involved. There are no mortgage interest rates. You are taking something that you used beautifully to build a net worth during your lifetime, and then you purchase an income stream that doesn't have all the headaches and it doesn't have all the renters. It doesn't have all the struggles. That's why I personally love owning both. I own 8 annuities. I, at one point last year, had 4 homes. And so I think you have to marry those two in a beautiful way and determine how much of each one do you want. Maybe at a certain stage in life, you only want 1 or 2 of one thing and you don't want to deal with anything else. But that's these stages in life we go through. Tanya, what do you see with your clients when it comes to the changing in ages and when they say, okay, maybe now's not the time to own it, maybe now's the time to sell it?
Well, I want to tell a story to give you an example of owning rental property, a big win for owning investment properties. And it's my own mother. So she and my dad got divorced around 1992. And in 1994, my grandpa said, Carla, you need some rental property because if you never get remarried and have a spouse with a second income, you're going to need something for your retirement. So thank you, Lord, for my grandpa, because that really paid off for my mom. What happened was in 1994, she built 2 duplexes. And in say 2015 era, she was able to pay both of those duplexes off because my grandparents passed. And so whatever they left for her, she was able to pay those off. So fast forward to 25. Now for the last 10 years, she's had income producing rental property. Well, she had a stroke in 2020 and needed that income to help take care of her. And she just went into independent living. She's doing really well and she loves her new home, but those rental properties are now paying for her independent living every month.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So, yes. So for my mom, those rental properties really have afforded her to be able to live fairly well and or live where she needed to live because of that monthly income stream. Now, she has me taking care of those.
Yes.
So if you didn't have a family member to step in and take care of your rental property for you, you obviously would need to hire a good property management company.
Yes.
But she having me on the side to take care of them for her, she's not having to pay anybody and she gets to keep all of that income to pay for where she's living now. And Brad, what you mentioned of when you get to a certain age, so if my mom were, stroke free and hadn't had a disabling stroke 5 years ago, she would probably be in a different position here in the upcoming years and would need to look at something like those annuities so that she didn't have to worry about taking care of those properties. I think that having that fail safe almost to be able to unload those properties is really important. And I think visiting with you or someone like you to be able to explain that is really important for these people who've owned income producing properties for their whole life. And now it's time to, I've got 30 properties and I don't need 30 properties. I don't need the headache anymore. What are we to do? They consult with you to get that good advice.
I wish we had more time. We're just scratching the hem of the garment on this topic, but real estate, owning real estate, rental properties, land, farms, can be such a vital part of a beautiful, successful retirement income plan. We are the tax experts, the real estate experts who know how to structure these things for you. So we want you to call anytime. And so, Tanya, if you will, again, give them your contact information as we close today.
Yes. My phone number, you can reach me anytime at 417-827-1405. And with Southwest Missouri Realty, you can look me up on any social media platform. And my website is tanya.swmrealty.com.
Friends, you can also go to our website, guaranteedsafemoney.com, where you can take free of charge the retirement course offered by the American College. Just go to the website, click on the retirement course. You can learn about all this stuff free of charge right there on our website. Call us anytime at 866-780-7233. There's always someone standing by to take your call. Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great week, and God bless.